So I'm going to share now a web page, my browser, which looks a bit like this. Excuse me. So this is just minimize that out of the way. I can't see what I'm doing. So this is a login page. So this is a different set of details. This is me logging in as a church warden for St. Augustine's in Ipswich. I was recently no longer a church warden, but the last few years, whilst I was there, I was involved in completing the annual stats for mission return on behalf of my church. And there's probably some little tips and things along the way that I can hopefully share with you. And I want to try and just explain maybe what some of the terminology is that you might not have come across before, or perhaps where you can go and find out what things mean. So I'm going to start by logging in, click the button. Oh, that's a good start, wasn't it? Wow, it didn't do that, did it, when we did the rehearsal? Okay, let's just try that again. Let's reload the page. There we go. Okay, I think I've logged in as administrator. Let's try it again because I changed that. Got a number of logins, as you can see. Hooray! Right, finally made it. So now I'm logged in as you can see at the top, as Paul had already described, Parish of St. Augustine's within the diocese there. When I go to the select church option at the top, it comes up with only those churches I can see. So part of the setup for when you get your login details for the parish return system ensures that you only can access the churches that you wish you're able to report on. So Paul's view that Paul had was the diocesan view across the whole diocese. This particular login is for me at my church, and so I can only see the churches in my parish, and there's 2 listed on there. So therefore I can't select any other churches. So that gives us an element of sort of just keeping things private and parochial, I guess you could say. So in particular today, we're looking at the statistics for mission return. I'm going to click on that edit return button. And this takes us into the form that Paul has already shared with you. And so now I can go through this and I can complete the information that's being asked for. I'm probably going to try and go through fairly quickly each of the options down this left-hand side of the screen. I'm not going to fill everything in because I don't know all the numbers. We're only in October for this year. But there's certainly one I can fill in to begin with, which is the electoral roll. I do know the electoral roll of our parish this year was recorded at 220. So I was going to enter that into the field at that point. And literally, it's as simple as that. You fill in the boxes as you go through. You get to the end of a page, you hit next, and it then goes on to the next one on this list down the side. If you have got any boxes that have not been filled in, which we have on the screen at the moment, when I click next, you get a warning. So first of all, we get a warning on the top of the screen in this sort of purple writing, excuse me, that says that there's some fields that are blank. You can enter unknown if it's appropriate because you don't know. If you intend to come back at a later date and complete this form, you can just hit the next button again and it will then take you on to the next page anyway. So it's just a reminder before you leave the page, there's some empty boxes. I don't know the other boxes when I'm going to fill in on those, so I won't do that, and I'll click next in a second, and that will then take me on to the next one on this menu on the left-hand side. Just while we're on this page, you might have noticed, or in fact you can see on here, it says churches included. So on the menu page, I clicked on St. Augustine of Hippo, which is the parish church. We also have a church plant in our parish called Limburg Road Community Church. So it's possible that I might actually be including numbers for that church as well. If as a parish, we decided we wanted to amalgamate the numbers together, we could do that. So I would tick that box as well. And then any numbers that are entered from there on in the form would be relevant to both churches as a collective. Alternatively, and indeed the way we do it, is you can actually fill in a separate form for each church within the parish. That is how we choose to do it. So there will be a separate entry for Limburg Road Community Church. So at the moment, I won't tick the box because we're only talking about the main parish church. So as I said, I'm going to click next again now, and it will take me through onto the next page. Immediately on the left, you can see that the electoral roll section has gone amber. So there's one of three things completed, so 33% complete. That will stay amber until all the boxes have been filled in, and it will go green. Fairly simple sort of traffic light mechanism. The red ones, clearly there's none of those have been entered at all, so they're showing as red. So we're on to the second page, which is Easter Christmas numbers. I don't have the Easter numbers to hand. Obviously the Christmas ones hasn't happened yet, so we'll know there's in the very early new year. When it's worth talking here about where do these numbers come from. So I'm sure we're fairly typical as a parish in that we have service register and we maintain a service register for all the services that we hold. And we do counts of people attending those services. And in essence, that's where the majority of the numbers come from that we're going to see entered into the stats for mission return. There is this particular section, section B, focuses in on Easter and Christmas. And you can see that the questions hopefully are fairly self-explanatory to you, but a lot of the questions also have a little question mark box by the side. If I click on that, can you see that? Paul, can you give me a wave if you can? You're not seeing a grey box, you're seeing the contents? Yeah, okay, brilliant. So you're seeing the help for question 3A, which is an attempt to give you just a little bit more information about the sort of thing that actually they're referring to in that particular question. So that's very useful to know. There's also some reminders here that if you there's an italic section at the top here, it says if you didn't hold any services or acts of worship at your church during these periods, then just please enter a 0 in the box. The key thing I think to remember is hopefully it's becoming clear that every box has to have something in it, and a 0 is a valid answer, as is the word unknown from what we saw higher up. And indeed, I think it accepts NA is not applicable as well. I think that might come up in another section further down. Okay, so I'm going to click next, and as we know, that's going to complain and say, oh, you've got some empty boxes, but I'm not going to do those now. We're just going to go next again. And that will take us into the next section. We'll see that section B, where I was, has stayed red because I didn't enter anything at all. So all the boxes in that section still need to be completed. So we're now on section C for the October count. Now this one can actually be being filled in now because as we go through October, we would encourage you, if you would wish, to record these numbers as you go. Through the month of October. The Church of England has always focused on October as a month where they want some more particular detail about numbers of attendees and the various services and activities listed here that which are undertaken. It breaks it down Sundays across a row and then for all the other days of the week. So you might put in here there were 2 services on the 1st of October. You might put in here then the count of all the adults that attended church for that service. If it was a fresh expression or if it was a school service, how many attended those? And similarly, breaking it down, so under 18s for children. I think it's under 18s, he says, having said that. Under 16, caught myself out. So those for children is and young people are defined as under 16. So those numbers would then go in these boxes. So if you had services on a Sunday, you might just do, let's say we've got 67 people attending. Sorry, not the number of services. 2 services on the Sunday, and you might have 67 people attending it. You might not have a fresh expression, so you would put not applicable in. You wouldn't have a school service, you put not applicable. In the church, you might say you're 21. In the fresh expression, not applicable, and school services not applicable. However, during the week, you might have another church service, and you might have had 23 adults attend that. You might also have a fresh expression taking place, and you may have had 20 people, 20 adults attend that, but maybe not a school service. Children attending that weekday church service may be a 0. and the fresh expression might have been maybe 6, and again a school service not applicable. So you can see how for October you'd build this page up week by week for each of the various activities and services that you were doing that fit the particular criteria that are being asked for here. I hope that makes a bit of sense. We've said there's two services on a Sunday, so this is total across both the services. I haven't broken that down at this point. So on Sunday, the 1st of October, 67 adults attended the church services and 21 children, but we didn't have any fresh expressions or school services. During the week, we had one church service, which had 23 adults and no children, and there was a fresh expression which had 20 adults and 6 children, and again no school services. Because I don't know if those numbers are correct, I'm just going to delete them all, so just bear with me a second. But I wanted to try and hopefully illustrate the sort of thought process behind filling those in and the sort of thing that we are being asked to do. There might be a quick way of doing this, but that will achieve the same thing. So then for each week of October, you would go through and do that until you're finished, and then you do next. Obviously, again, blank fields. So you've got lots of fields left. Do you want to continue? I'll say yes, and on we go. On the next page, which is acts of worship in schools, I'm just going to flip to the bottom very quickly. Yeah, okay. So yeah, acts of worship in schools. So this is just choosing one of these in essence as to whether or not you hold acts of worship in schools or whether your team leads anything in schools. And there's some text there to help you work out what usually means in this context and maybe some stuff that you shouldn't record. Tick 1 box as the closest estimate. If you don't have a school in your parish, tick that box. It's worth just mentioning at the bottom of the screen, we've got 3 options. I've been clicking next to move on to obviously the next screen. You could go back and it would do the same check. If I click back at this point, it would say you haven't chosen anything. Do you want to continue? And I'd hit the back again and it would go to the previous screen, which is the October count. You can, as I alluded to at the beginning, save and return. So if I click save and return, it will give me a prompt and say, you've got a blank box. Is this what you really want to do? And if I click it again, it will remember all the information that I've put in so far. It will give me an overall completion estimate for the overall return, and it will take me back out to the menu. So you don't have to do it all in one go, is what we're saying. And you don't have to do it in order. On the screen at the minute, we're looking at acts of worship in schools. I might decide perhaps I don't want to do the next one at this moment in time, so I might click on worship in community. Am I going to really move on? There's a slightly different error message come up on the screen. Do I really want to do that? I'm going to continue and say yes. So, and it's now taking me through to the worshiping community page. So you don't have to go through all these in the order that they're shown on the screen. Church at home I won't show you that one. It's just about whether or not you have online services, which is the church at home is the phrase that's been used. Whether you broadcast from your church. And it's fairly simple tick boxes, yes, no. They don't need to know numbers of people attending your online streams. That's not being asked for. It's purely a way of just trying to get some idea of how popular and how much that the technology is being used. In the worshiping community page, worth noting here at the very top, this is potentially an area of, shall we say, discussion as to define what a worshipping community is. The Church of England has kindly provided a document which is accessible by clicking on this link. You can see my cursor's changed, so I could click it. I won't do that now because we won't have enough time. But that would then take you through to a PDF file, which gives you some information about why worshipping community information is being collected. Which is building on the sort of things that Archdeacon David was referring to earlier. It would also give you a clue as to what to include. You know, those people who come to midweek services. Include people in your worship community who maybe are ill or unable to make it to church. They're still part of your worshiping community. Regular fresh expressions. Fresh expression is another thing which can be a point of discussion. But that is a worshiping community. still. Maybe people who live in care residential homes to whom you distribute communion on a regular basis. And again, it would define what regularly means in this particular case. So there's a short document on that link which will give you that information and a bit more that I've just relayed to you. In essence, what you're going to be asked to do, question 9, is how many people were in that worshipping community, and it asks you to break it down. So it's basically school-age children, sorry, from 0 to 10, so primary up to primary age, and then those who would be counted as senior schools, so young people aged 11 to 17, a large bracket which includes the 18 to 69-year-olds, and then 70 plus. Again, there's some reminders here as who to add, who to involve in the count when you're going through that. You're also asked to consider how your worshipping community has changed during the last year, so 2023. How many people would have joined and how many people would have left, and it's broken down again into adults or children and young people. Rather confusingly, I'm afraid, an adult is classed as 18 plus. So in my defence earlier, when I talked about children being defined as under 18s, I might have been thinking of this box, because in this case, children and young people would include those under 18, not under 16. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. It does make life slightly more complicated if you have a number of people, obviously, who are in that 16, 17-year-old age bracket. The document I referred to, which is linked through from here, also explains about accuracy of the numbers that you return. It is worth, and I would definitely recommend you go and have a read through. It's not expected that we would have a register of people attending every week. So, like a school register. So we're not going to know exactly who's there and who's not every week. Electoral roll is always a good starting point, because the electoral roll of your church clearly defines a community. You might want to think about people that have definitely left or moved away, or people who've moved in, have been baptized or joined Alpha courses recently or something like that. If you can't answer the questions accurately, I wouldn't be too concerned. I'm speaking personally. We don't have detailed numbers. We're moving towards that a little bit with the help of some software called Church Suite, but we don't have the detailed numbers of a worshipping community. We look at the numbers of those attending our services. We look at those who are attending the various groups that we run during the week. We have an idea of average numbers, perhaps, who might attend, and you start to build up then a whole number which includes all of the different separate parts of your worshipping community. In general, as the document I think says at the end, best estimates will always be better than no information at all. If you really can't split it down into age groups, you can just put a total in. Excuse me a second, there's a phone ringing, which really shouldn't be doing that. So we just ask that people try their best, and that's what we do. Like I said, do read that document because it will help. I'll move on to fresh expressions very quickly because I've got half an eye on the time, Charlotte. Fresh expressions is the next session down. Oh, that's because I haven't got any boxes filled in. It's caught me out. Again, there's help for us. There's a document referenced here. What is a fresh expression? There's a little decision tree for you to describe what that might be. Is it missional? Is it contextual? Does it engage people outside of church, for instance, in a Christian community? Does it meet fairly regularly? There's a few sort of questions on this decision tree, which will help you decide if what you're doing is a fresh expression of church in some way. And it just needs to know information about it, what it is, the name of it, how often you hold it. These are all things that you would know about your fresh expression. The form allows you to put in up to 4 different fresh expressions. Now, when I hit next on this one, it's going to complain because last year I think we put one in called Messy Church. Did it do it? No, it didn't. Why didn't it do that? Okay. I thought it was going to say you missed it out, but it didn't. It's moved on to the next section, which is baptisms, weddings, and funerals. Information that you should have readily available to you. You'll know how many people have been baptized in your parish. And if there's been any Thanksgiving services, you'll know about funeral services. Conversations with your clergy will let you reveal to you if they've been and officiated at funerals at other places away from your church, because that's also information that we like to collect as well. That's that page. And then finally, you get to a page called the one-off question. Notice how when I clicked off this, it said, are you sure? Because you haven't filled anything in. Every year, the last question, the last section is a different question. And this is talking about any new worshiping communities or congregations that you've started in the last 12 months. Something new that has begun that you need to report on. There's some simple questions there to fill in, fairly straightforward, just asking for lists and anything additional we want to add at the bottom. Finally, I'm going to go to J, which is a comment. So this allows you to put some information back onto the form. You can, if there are any exceptional circumstances, for instance, so in 2020, yes, there was a COVID pandemic. For me, also in 2020, we were in interregnum, so there was, these. It's just worth mentioning these factors which might have some impact on the numbers that you return. Finally, you'll hit save and return, and you'll go back to your menu for your church, and you'll see that if I scroll down here, the return is now 1%. So basically, I've answered one question. If you recall, I put in the electoral roll numbers at the very beginning, but that's all saved, and I can then come back at another time when I'm ready to hit edit return and then do some more completing of information. The other stuff that Paul showed you is all available here, so I can look at the charts and dashboards for my church. Paul could see it for every church or parish. I would only see mine at this point. Just wanted to highlight that to you. And as a user, as an admin user for your church, you can actually manage a sub account for your parish. If you want to know what that means, you can set up your vicar to be, or your rector to be a read-only access to the return so they can see what's been entered. If that perhaps is confusing a little bit, just email us at statistics@cfesuffolk.org and we can explain more to you. I realise the time is whizzed by. Apologise, Charlotte. I'm going to stop at that point. Thanks very much for listening, and I hope that was of some value. Thank you very much.